Thank you. Yes, we're live streaming today. So welcome to our meeting for September the 23rd, 2020. I'd like to welcome everybody here today and ask if there's any disclosure of interest. Seeing none, I will move to the confirmation of our minutes of June the 17th. Moved by Chair Emerson, seconded by Vice Chair Molyneux. All those in favor? And that's carried. Our next item, we have two presentations, and the first one is 3.1. Chief, would you like to start it off?
Sure, thank you. The first item we're talking about here is a very important day for York Regional Police. As you all know, Deputy Crawford is retiring at the end of the month in about 7 days, after 34 years of what I would call, and I think everybody here at this table and within the board would say, a very distinguished career. Mayor Haxton, I know, Chair, you're going to offer some remarks, so I won't step on, I know where you're going with your comments. What I will add to it before presenting Andre with, before I get to the presentation, I'll turn it back over to you, but I just wanted to say, Andre, on behalf of, you've always held yourself in the most, in a most positive way to the organization, representing the office of the Deputy Chief, supporting the office of the Chief of Police. I would say on behalf of the over 2,400 members, both civilian and sworn, we just want to provide our heartfelt, sincere gratitude for what you've done for this organization over 34 years. You've been a deputy chief for about 7.5 years now, and I know in the time you've been a deputy, you've provided guidance, support, coaching, mentoring, and a ton of friendship to many people in this organization. And among those people, many of the people around this table. I can say on a personal note, and I really mean this, this is a heartfelt thank you to you from me. Over the past 5 months, it's been a lot of change in the organization, a lot of moving parts in the organization, and you've always been there to support the entire executive command team with, again, guidance and support with all of your experience and knowledge from being a member of the executive command team as long as you have. So I want to wish you, your family, sincere gratitude as well to Janet and your extended family, because it's with their support that you were able to commit your time here as much as you have, and many events, many community events, many meetings, and a ton of commitment to the organization. I also want to acknowledge as well, Chair Haxton, that Andre's right hand for the past 7.5 years is in the room here today, Ann Crisp, who's his executive assistant, and I thought it was just appropriate to have, as did Andre, to have Ann here today, since she's been his right hand and a huge supporter of Andre as well for the past 7.5 years. So those are my comments, Andre. Thank you for everything you've done for everyone, and you will be missed, no doubt about it. Chair, I can turn it over to you for your comments.
Thank you very much, Chief. Well said. I'd like to take a moment on behalf of the Police Services Board to acknowledge the exceptional policing career of Deputy Chief Andre Crawford. Following the 34-year career with the York Regional Police and over 7 years serving the citizens of this region as Deputy Chief, Andre is retiring. Andre's policing career began in 1986, working with Uniform Patrol Number 2 District and 5 District. From there, his career spanned to criminal investigation, intelligence, sexual assault, and crimes against children, homicide, missing persons, training, and education. Deputy Crawford, throughout your career, your accomplishments have been numerous, and you have forged many relationships within the community that help support partnerships with York Regional Police and the citizens of our region. Police Services Board has benefited immensely from your knowledge and leadership over the past 7 years in your role as Deputy Chief, and York Regional Police is better and stronger police because of the service that you have provided and community. On behalf of the Police Services Board and the citizens of the region, I'd like to extend our gratitude for your years of service to our community And thank you for your commitment to York Regional Police for the past 34 years. I extend well wishes to you and Janet and the very best in your future endeavors. Thank you so much. We really do appreciate you.
So Madam Chair, with your permission, I'm going to, and Andre, it's time for me to present you with the badge. We're going to do it with some sort of social distancing, respecting. But Andre, once again, I know you'll hold this dear, and you will. We just wanted to present you with your retirement badge here. Today is the right time to do it. So congratulations.
Thanks very much, Chief.
Okay. And one other thing, which is customary, and I will just read it. We have the obelisk here. I will present to you, to Deputy Chief Andre Crawford, an appreciation of your dedicated service to York Regional Police. And I would say, add to that, not only to the police service, but to the community, because I know you're a staunch supporter of everything we've done in the community and a big builder of that. So congratulations again.
Thank you.
Okay, and then with your permission, Chair, I'll turn the floor over to Andre for some comments.
Please.
Well, through you, Chair, and to the board, thank you for those kind words and the recognition of what has been a wonderful career for me here at York Regional Police. And thank you, Chief, for your words as well, too. So for 34 years, I've carried the URP badge with pride. Whether it be as a constable, a detective constable, a detective, an inspector, a superintendent, or for the last 7 years as a deputy chief.
Sorry, Andre, you're on mute, I think.
No, I'm okay.
We have them.
Okay, sorry about that.
And I can assure you that I will carry this badge. I will carry this badge with pride and with gratitude for the rest of my life. I'm retiring at a tumultuous time when the noble industry of policing is being questioned from all sides. I suggest that the board listen to your executive command team to assist you during these times. I urge the board to continue to have ongoing dialogue with your Black community and not simply a one-off that checks the box. But more importantly, I implore the board to listen to your community and to take action, especially the ones who are seeking questions about their, and I emphasize their police service. Black lives matter. I cannot imagine another profession where I would have had the opportunity to experience and see so much. And more importantly, the opportunity to have met and worked with so many amazing people, both here at York Regional Police and in the community. Especially my fellow colleagues here in the room, the chief and the deputies. And of course, the rest of the team here who provide high-level important support to us. Jason from the legal aspect, Kathleen looking after the media side of things, and arguably the most important person because he looks after the budget, Jeff Janel. But I would be remiss if I didn't thank the most important person in the room. And the person, of course, as mentioned, has kept me on track for the last 7 years. And that is my executive administrative assistant, Ann Crisp. Thanks for everything, Ann, and looking after me. I'll be forever grateful to you and to everyone else here and at YRP for the support for what they've done for me. So let me close by saying that I thank God for blessing me with the past 34 years and a fantastic career. Finally, I will pray to God to continue to guide the board and the executive command team as you lead York Regional Police into the future. Thank you again for the opportunity to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andre. Very well said. We do appreciate the years that you've been with us. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
With that, we will move along to 3.2 Project Nova on our agenda.
With your permission, Madam Chair, and while we're getting set up here, I'll just give you add a couple of remarks to the presentation before I turn it over to who I'll introduce here is Staff Sergeant Brad Week. Many times over the year, I will just let you know that Project Nova has been a project under the umbrella of Breakthrough for the past year, and Brad's going to share with you a number of achievements and some priorities for 2021, so you can sort of have a sense of an awareness of where we're going. So, Brad, in saying that, I'll turn it over to you.
Morning, everyone. I'm just going to get the slide deck set here.
Can I see it?
Minimize that for a second.
Madam Chair, can you see the screen yet? Are we sharing or?
No, I'm not seeing it yet.
No. Oh, sorry, I thought you were getting it for Robert.
The host will need to give us privileges to share our screen, please.
I just made you guys hosts, so you should be able to share your screen now.
How about now?
No, sir.
Okay,
Ah,
There we go.
there we go.
okay, excellent.
Just confirm, do you have the entire slide or are you seeing my speaker notes as well?
The entire slide.
Excellent. Okay. Congratulations, Deputy Crawford.
Thank you very much.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the board. My name is Brad White, and I'm a staff sergeant in Strategic Services, and I'm the project leader of NOVA. For the next 15 or 20 minutes, I'm going to walk you through the project and 6 initiatives that we've been working on over the last year. And also I'll give you a glimpse of what we have begun working on and will continue working on over the next 12 months. So NOVA is a breakthrough project, which is committed to modernizing frontline policing. We are focused on redefining what a frontline police officer does in York Region. There are 4 goals that the NOVA team has set, which all speak to the wellness of our members and also increasing public safety through efficiencies. Balancing workload for our frontline officers, being more efficient on the front line, putting our skilled frontline officers where their powers, equipment, and training are needed, and making frontline a desirable place to work. And our strategy to address these goals are that innovation and problem solving happen by engaging our members on what the problems and the solutions are, having a diverse group of thinkers on the team, and conducting evidence-based research. And I'll say that the makeup of the project team comes from members from across the organization that have volunteered to work on the project. It is a makeup of both sworn and civilian members from all of our districts, as well as support areas such as IT, communications, information management, and finance. So the first initiative that I'll talk to you about today surrounds our process around prisoner meals. I understand that Superintendent Almeida has already introduced the project to you a little bit, and I'll expand on it in more detail today. So this is an excellent example of modernizing a practice to ensure that we are using our frontline officers appropriately. I can just walk you through what our old process would be, but when a prisoner was at a district and we needed to feed them, the staff surgeon at the district would call our communications, speak with a call taker, have a call for service generated that would go to a dispatcher. The call would get dispatched to an officer, and the officer would drive, pick up the food, deliver the food to the district. Our new process now, food is ordered online by the station duty operator using a smart device, and a third-party service delivers the food. And what this does is it removes officers and support staff and communication staff entirely from the process. We ran a pilot in the fall of 2019, and after that was successful, we were able to implement this region-wide. And by adopting this new process, what we've done is able to eliminate nearly 3,200 calls for service over the course of a year at about 2,200 hours of frontline officer time, which can now be focused on other priorities. And I can share some numbers with you that what we're now spending on average per delivery of a meal is about $3.70. And we compare that to what we were factoring in all the costs related to a frontline officer doing it, which was around $85 a delivery, making us the most expensive delivery service on the planet. So we're quite excited about this new process, and I can tell you that the frontline likes having that time back. So next up, modernizing our response to residential alarms. On June 1st of this year, we adopted a verified alarm response program here at York Region. Our research was able to confirm what frontline officers were telling us, in that 99.5% of all unverified alarms were false. I'll share some numbers. In 2018 alone, officers responded to a total of 5,200 alarm calls, unverified alarm calls. And of those 5,200 alarm calls, they only led to 28 reports of break-ins. And of those 5,200 calls, only one arrest was made. And this is a unique, rare circumstance, as it was Air 2 that was able to help us, and just it was good timing that they were overhead at the time this was happening, but a very rare circumstance. So what is an unverified alarm? An unverified alarm would be a hit on one sensor in a house. So for example, motion in a family room or a garage door being open. 99.5% of the times, these one-hit alarms are false. And this happens for a number of reasons that we were able to confirm in our research. There's environmental factors, there's things like pets, but also faulty technology, outdated equipment, resulting in those extensive false alarms. So in our new model, we only dispatch officers now to alarms which have been verified. And a verified alarm is a situation where there is confirmation that a criminal activity is happening. This can be through audio, either from the homeowner, if they've got audio or video that they're able to confirm, or from a monitoring company. So through audio, also through video of something happening, through any witnesses that are seeing something happening, or if we receive multiple alarm activation points in the residence. And in all of those instances, we immediately send officers. So by adopting this new process of only attending verified alarms, we realize the following efficiencies. And what we're seeing is we can reduce the calls for service that are coming into our communication branch by monitoring stations. And that's in turn that we don't have to dispatch officers to those 5,200 calls. With alarm calls, it's our standard operating procedure to dispatch 2 cruisers. So that's 10,000 cruisers less being dispatched over the course of a year, and 4,100 hours of time, which is being given back to the front line to be used in a more efficient and effective manner. And I put up a number there of an approximate cost associated with all the frontline costs associated to having to dispatch officers for those 5,200 calls at nearly over $500,000. I can also share with the board that the approach that we have taken to modernize this new way we do business is in keeping with what some other services across the province have done. We've seen this happen in London, Niagara, Waterloo, Hamilton, and also in Toronto. So next, a new business practice related to how officers process arrest warrants. And again, this is another example of modernizing York Regional Police to remove officers from a process where we can find a better solution. And what we have done here is revisit our legal obligations and leverage new technology to remove officers from acting as couriers, to courier hard copy documents, arrest warrants from our information management to the various districts. And I'll just share with you the old process. So again, I'll use Vaughan as an example. If a 4-district officer in Vaughan arrested a wanted party and they would begin processing that person at the station, they would have called our communications branch, input a call for service, and an officer would be dispatched from Vaughan to travel to Aurora, to where we retain our hard copy arrest warrants, pick up that document, and transport it back. The new process now takes only 5 minutes and utilizes staff that we already have in place in information management. We send the officer an electronic copy, and the hard copy is delivered the next day to courts with a package with our already in place internal civilian couriers. This new process allows for the frontline officers to remain in their districts, keeping our communities safe. And through our research, we were able to see that on average, when an officer was dispatched to pick up a warrant, they were spending nearly an hour and 14 minutes of travel time acting as a courier to move that information around. And now we remove that entirely, giving nearly 1,000 hours of frontline time back. So next, something that we're really proud of here at York Regional Police, our Call Diversion Unit, or CDU as we refer to it as. So what is this? This is a team of officers that we have that divert calls away from the front line by responding to lower priority calls for service over the telephone. And the unit is capable of taking reports over the phone, answering questions, resolving minor disputes, and also collecting digital evidence. I can tell you that the CDU is a key element in our overall alternative service delivery strategy to more efficiently and effectively manage calls from the community. We were able to implement this unit well ahead of schedule with COVID-19 upon us, as we saw an opportunity. But this was part of our strategy to mitigate risk to our members and also to the public by limiting contact and sending officers out to people's houses. And also as a way to be able to continue to deliver service to those lower priority calls during all of the uncertainty associated with the state of emergency and the initial waves of COVID. Because the schools have been closed during the onset there, we redeployed officers from community services, mainly our school resource officers and our youth education officers. And to date, the unit has handled nearly 8,000 calls for service. And this represents about 37% of all our lower priority calls, our priority 3, 4, and 7 calls, freeing up a huge amount of time for officers to be committed to ensuring safety on our roadways and safety for the public. A very important enhancement that we are seeing in the CDU is that the CDU is able to manage calls and complete reports at nearly half the time than their on the road counterparts. And this is for a number of reasons, because they don't need to travel to and from the call. And also they're not doing the data entry of having to complete the reports in the cruisers. We've got officers that are at a desk with multiple screens that they're able to use, sit in a comfortable chair without their use of force equipment, have a headset on, and able to get through the calls and speak with the complainants much quicker. So building on the success of the initial emergency deployment of the CDU, the decision was made to make this a permanent unit within York Regional Police. And to note, feedback from our frontline officers has been entirely and overwhelmingly positive. I know the chief that will confirm through his visits to each of the districts and speaking with frontline officers that every frontline officer recognizes this as a huge benefit and something that makes a huge difference in day-to-day operations. There's a noticeable difference they have. There's more discretionary time they have to be proactive and engage with the community. And it's been a resounding success. So the current staffing model that we have is 24 full-time constables and 8 constables in rotational positions. Half of the officers we've redeployed from our collision reporting unit. So they're still doing collision reporting responsibilities. And then in the downtime, also managing calls for service over the phone. The additional rotational positions, the 8 that I spoke about, are filled with both accommodated members and officers from platoons. And these rotational positions are really neat in that they give commanders options and opportunities to provide members that are accommodated with some meaningful work and use their skills and knowledge in an appropriate manner. And also to give platoon officers some respite from the front line with regard to shift work and just attending priority calls if a member needs a bit of a break from that for a period of time. Again, utilizing their knowledge, skills, and abilities where we can have lots of value. So the decision to make this the CDU a permanent unit was made based on the value it brings to frontline operations, efficiencies, wellness, and public safety. And a very important point to make here is that we were able to launch this unit by redeploying officers that we already have at York Regional Police, not requesting not having to request any additional officers to modernize a process. And in this modernized process, we have already found an efficiency of what we project to be nearly 25,000 hours over the course of a year by having a more efficient process. So something that we're very excited about. I'll give an example of the type of call that the CDU would divert away from the front line. So this is pretty typical of something that we would handle in the units. We've got a complainant that had their vehicle broken into overnight, and items taken were paperwork in the glove box. There is video surveillance that the complainant has and that the neighbors have. So what happens here is that the complainant receives an almost immediate call back and is able to speak with an officer, file their report and get advice and ask their questions, versus having to wait an unknown period of time, not knowing exactly when the officer would be able to attend in person, depending on priority calls that were received that day. Also, the complainant and the neighbors are sent a link to upload their video evidence to our new digital evidence management system. And this versus officers having to manually retrieve the evidence from the scene and then attend the station and log that evidence in. I can tell you that we are starting to see the new DEM system have a significant impact on saving officers time, and something that is truly modernizing and enhancing a process with state-of-the-art technology. So I'd like to thank the board for their support with the DEMS, with the new DEMS system. And lastly, what we have here is the obvious financial savings of not having to send a cruiser to the scene with the travel time and the cruiser and the gas and all the technology that goes into sending a fully kitted out police cruiser. The other types of calls being managed by the CDU include property damages, minor disputes, minor threat calls, minor harassments, and minor frauds. So next, again, something that we're really excited about here and saw some great results. I'll brief you on a 60-day pilot that we were able to run here at York Regional Police, where we had crisis workers in our call diversion unit. So as you may know, YRP has a partnership with York Region Support Services Network, where we utilize crisis support workers to assist with mental health calls. And during the pandemic, crisis workers were no longer able to attend calls in person. And together, working in that partnership with them, we were able to seize an opportunity to pilot a service over the phone, where we were together, we were able to continue to utilize crisis workers and offer their service. So for the pilot, we had a mental health support officer and a crisis worker. They would sit together and they would screen calls incoming to the police service that had a mental health component to it. And if there was no immediate safety risk, they would begin intervention over the phone and only request officers be dispatched as needed. The pilot allowed for these highly trained mental health experts to continue to be able to provide the support and intervention people in crisis need. And the only reason we wrapped the pilot up was when the crisis workers were able to attend calls again in person. We went back to that model because of the funding around them. So I'll just go through the stats on the screen as you're reading, some really significant numbers there. So again, the pilot ran May and June. Over that time, 192 calls were screened. 138 of those were fully diverted by over-the-phone diversion with a crisis worker, where we did not need to engage a police officer at all or send them. In 47 cases, we had a blended response where the crisis support worker would continue to talk to the person, and sometimes they just request that officers go and visually put eyes on the person to ensure that everything is okay or check for something. And this is the real astounding number, but out of those 192 calls, only 7 of them required a full frontline response where there was risk to public safety or risk to the individual. When speaking with my partners in finance, we were able to just put together some numbers there to kind of quantify the savings associated with not deploying officers to those 192 calls. And we estimated over 60 days, roughly $73,000 of frontline related costs to deploy those officers to those calls. So the success of the pilot is being utilized to develop a tiered response to persons in crisis. We are looking for opportunities to continue to work with the YSSN to implement something more permanently. And like I alluded to there, in a tiered model, we anticipate that we could, that 70% of incoming mental health calls could be dealt with over the phone by a crisis worker and not a police officer. And that leaves only a small number of cases where there is significant risk to the public where a frontline officer would need to be dispatched. But really, the most important thing driving here is that people are continuing to get the help and support that they need, and we as police officers can focus on putting resources where they are needed. Do you have anything you wanted to top that up?
Yeah, just the only comment I'll make here is this has the potential to be a real game changer for our organization and potentially for many organizations as we know the conversation out there, which is alive and well, is around getting us out of the business of mental health. And as you can see from the slide, when you can triage a high number of mental health calls into a position where only, in this case, of 192 calls, only 7 require a frontline response, we minimize the impact to the officers or potential injury. We minimize potential injury or impact to the members. But most importantly, and what's really clear here is the people that are in crisis are getting the actual help they need, the type of help they need. And that's really important to focus on that. When you look at that number of 72%, that's a game changer. And you all would have seen many of these pie charts before that had mental health calls as always a high number of calls we respond to. We see this as one step in the right direction to get to moving police away from, as best we can, away from being the first and only response to people in crisis. So.
Thank you, Chief. So the last initiative that I'm going to talk to you about today surrounds how we would have scheduled frontline officers to attend court after working a night shift. And this is a really good news story and one that surrounds member wellness. The initiative is going to go live in the coming weeks in October. And I'll just kind of break down our old practice for you. So if a member was scheduled for court after working a night shift, let's say they were working 6 in the evening till 6 in the morning, they would go directly from the police station to courts to report there for 9 in the morning, and they would be awake and engaged for a minimum of 17 hours, having to drive and give testimony. Now, if court continued into the afternoon tier, which from my experience, it generally does most times, we're now putting the member in a situation where they're awake for 20 plus hours, having to give testimony and then drive a vehicle, either their vehicle or a police car home. And there's huge risks associated with that. So the new process really is a win for the member and a win for the organization, and that we now deploy officers, instead of working that 6 to 6 shift, we deploy them on a noon to midnight shift. And this is, we know from the numbers, this is when we experience the highest demands and calls for service. So now we have more resources on the road to answer those calls to keep the community safe. And it also allows for the member to get some rest before a day at court. So again, this initiative is entirely about the wellness and safety of our members and minimizing and managing risk to our members in the organization. And we also see the added financial benefit of not having to pay out shift to court carryover overtime, where a member would, in our contract, get paid for that downtime of just when their shift ends prior to going to court. We anticipate that to be around $44,000 of overtime that we would no longer be paying out. So let's just look at a recap of the initiatives I've gone over and the projected savings associated with the various projects. So with the exception of the last one I just went over there, the court after nights, which would be a direct savings, what we're looking at here is a value associated with a number value, a financial value associated with sending officers to all those calls that we're saving on, where we can now use that time differently. All of the initiatives that I've spoken today have several things in common. They are all a modernized approach, which is more efficient and responsible with one of our most valuable resources, our human resource, our frontline officers, to ensure that their skills, their training, their equipment are in the right place and not in places that they shouldn't be. All of these initiatives allow for greater availability for priority calls, for more visibility on our roadways, for more time to be proactive, and also more time to engage with our community. So just to kind of glimpse into the future now, we'll look at the 4 projects that we'll be concentrating on over the next 12 months. So the first one there in green, under our alternative service delivery strategy, we're going to continue to make enhancements in the call diversion unit. We think there's some additional things we can do to save our CIB officers' times and some of the how our cases get routed and some of the tracking that needs to be done there. We're going to do research around the creation of a community support officer here at York Regional Police. We're in the very early stages of this, but some examples of some things that we think a special constable could do instead of a police officer would be things like guarding crime scenes, doing traffic direction, other minor low-level priority calls for service where powers of arrest, use of force are not required. We hope to have a recommendation in place for spring of 2021 and possibly ready to deploy in 2022 if things go well. Lastly, updating and enhancing our online reporting platform to increase capacity and make it a more user-friendly experience for the public and also for our investigators. Moving over to the blue column there, we're going to take a look at prisoner management and make recommendations and a business case to support utilizing special constables more fully within our districts with regard to booking and prisoner care, and that would give some time back to our frontline supervisors to focus more on our people. And we've heard that message loud and clear from the constables that they would like their supervisors, they would like more time with their supervisors, and we know that prisoner management is a huge area where our staff sergeants and our sergeants are spending time. So moving over to the orange row there, frontline supervision. We're going to be making some recommendations to better utilize and coordinate our frontline supervisors from our admin sergeants, operational sergeants, platoon sergeants, and staff sergeants so that we've got an updated roles and responsibilities for them and there's no redundancies there. We also want to establish some key performance indicators for our supervisors. We have something in place for our constables, but we really need a way for commanders to evaluate sergeants and staff sergeants, and we think that is keeping in line with everything we've done so far using our various BI dashboards and everything we've done with our constables. It aligns nicely. And lastly, with supervision, a strategy to reduce turnover on the front line with our supervisors, to keep frontline supervisors in their positions longer so that they can better get to know their members, better coach their members, better mentor them, and ultimately manage risk and offer a better service there. And we'll just move to the last column in yellow there before we wrap up for the day. But we really want to look at what the impact has been on all of the initiatives that I've spoken to you about. What's the impact been on our call diversion units, on all those hours that we're getting back, on all those reduction in calls for service that frontline aren't attending. Gather the data and do some analysis on that to reevaluate what our minimum deployments need to be to ensure that we can keep our citizens safe and ensure that we've got an equitable workload balanced out amongst our officers. And we'd also like to report back on and give recommendations on potentially additional day shift options for officers to meet both their needs and the needs of the organization. Right now on a day shift, we only have a 6 to 6 and a 7 to 7 shift. And listening to our members, potentially, we would like to introduce some shifts later on. And I'll just throw out some numbers, but whether that be an 8 to 8 shift or a 9 to 9 shift, we really want to dig into the data. And that the nice thing about that will be is if we can find something that's good for our members, that will also meet our needs better again. And that we know when calls for service are coming in and we need more resources on the road to manage those calls for service. And that's all I have for everyone today. I'll just wrap up with, we just had a project management planning session with our NOVA team last week, targeting these 4 projects. And I think that you can see from the initiatives that I've gone through, they really tie in nicely to our business plan and that they are entirely member driven, evidence-based in nature, and that we really focus on being innovative, keeping the public safe, looking at member wellness, and looking towards any partnership that we can either internally or externally. And the last 4 main projects that I spoke to you about, again, all align nicely with this, tie in with this, and are built around these pillars. So thank you.
Congratulations. Quite the project. Are there questions or comments from our board members?
Okay.
Ms. Fang, please.
Thank you, Virginia. Good morning, everyone. And just quickly, thank you, Andre. Wish you a very happy and healthy retirement.
Thank you very
And
much.
I also see Paulo and Cecile back there. Welcome and congratulations again.
Thank you.
It was very special and joyful ceremony on Monday. I hope you all enjoyed it too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on this NOVA, I just have some quick questions, please. I think it's great that we look at efficiencies, continuous improvement. I just want to clarify the cost saving. Is it all of the costs tend to be soft cost, meaning mostly from time savings and versus hard costs? Hard costs will be the actual savings contributing to the bottom line of the operating cost or budget. So
Correct. So
clarify
with the exception of the last one there around overtime related to that we're paying out to members for court, what I've done there is the dollar value is it's a cost associated to those calls of deploying officers to those calls. And now we're getting that time back and that value back to use it elsewhere.
Okay, great. So majority is soft costs and there is no savings in terms of FTEs except for that overtime cost piece. Thank you. And then another quick question, just on that a prisoner meal delivery. It's definitely a great idea to not to have our officers as the courier service person. And I'm just wondering, food takeout and delivery services has been going on for years. How can we only just realize this will be an efficiency saving now? What happened to 3 years ago? I would think we will have these prisoner meal services ongoing since inception. So I'm just trying to understand our organization. Do we encourage or have the culture of whatever we see an opportunity to improve efficiency, we do it, or we have to wait until a major project like Breakthrough to start to look into areas for efficiency?
Maybe I could take that one. It just, to be quite frank, it just hasn't been an area of focus in the past in terms of what I'd call for NOVA now. A lot of what you've seen so far is really what I would term, a layman's term of low-hanging fruit, things that we can do quickly and we thought could be done expeditiously to bring value back to what our expectation is that a frontline officer is actually doing, which should be the core duties of a police officer found within the Police Services Act. At the end of the day, we came to know quite easily there's a number of things they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, that we wouldn't expect somebody carrying use of force out on the front line doing. But the short answer is are we always looking? More so now than we have in the past. I can tell you NOVA has spawned from another project that prior to you being a board member, which was called the PIT Crew, Patrol Innovation Team. And it didn't come up in the area of efficiencies back then, and it's on the table now, but we are being much more innovative in our use of technology, which has really come to the forefront. This is just one minor example, but I think you're gonna see, and we're probably gonna hear from very shortly, some different technologies and some of the reports we're gonna pick up here later, how we are looking to find those solutions now versus giving it 3-4 years before we actually, for argument's sake, pull the trigger on something like that. So that's kind of it.
Great, great. I do look forward to this newer generation of leadership and innovative management of our organization. And last one on the CDU, I'm wondering, how does CDU compare with our 911 call center? Correct me if I'm wrong, CDU is also kind of like a call center staffed by our officers on a part-time basis. So we do not staff it with incremental net new FTEs. So these officers, they take on this role to address calls. And is this staffing level similar to the 911 call center?
I'll just clarify and maybe go into a little bit more detail on the process, is that those calls coming in from the community are still being initially handled by our call takers, who take the call, input the call into our system, and then it gets stacked. And then from there, the CDU does the call back. If it's a call that they are going to take, then they grab it from there. So the officers in the CDU aren't the initial officers taking the call from the public. That still comes in all through one place, is managed in one central area, and then we deal with it in different ways. If we need to send an officer from there, we do, or if we can deal with it in the CDU from there, then it gets diverted from there, but it's still all managed and at that point of intake.
Okay, so it all starts from call center, and then instead of immediately dispatched to our district office or officers, we go through CDU to further screening the nature of these calls.
Correct, yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's
Welcome.
all from me.
Thank you very much. Other members with questions or comments? Mr. Purcell.
Just to clarify, the CDU, you said this was a 2-month exercise with crisis support workers. Is this going to be formalized as part of the structure of the force now? Is that the plan?
So there's two things there. We've got the call diversion unit, which is dealing with the lower priority calls, which is in place. And then we had a 60-day pilot just around mental health calls that we were having crisis workers in our, as part of our CDU, managing just the mental health calls. That 60-day pilot has come and gone, and we're looking for opportunities to continue with that. So call diversion in general is here with lower priority calls. The mental health aspect of diverting calls, it's status quo right now, building on a business case and looking for opportunities to continue with the successes that we saw from that 60-day pilot. Again, just around the mental health related calls.
And can I just add one comment to that, please? Just also of note, Mr. Purcell, I'm currently in conversation with the Associate Minister of Mental Health and Addiction, Minister Tobolo, and I've had a conversation directly with the Minister of Health on this actual model that we're talking about here to gain support to try and move this in a more global fashion, I guess, provincially. But at the end of the day, we do see this as something that should be become more of a full-time permanent operational piece for our call diversion unit as well. There's always been conversations around embedding crisis workers in our call center, but of course we don't own those folks. So it's in partnership. We have to sort out how that's going to unfold.
Go ahead.
Just a quick follow on. I think very clearly from the lessons we're learning from things that are going on in the United States in particular, but certainly not exclusively in the United States, this seems to be a very useful way forward, particularly with a view to public safety, in particular, or most particularly with view to the public safety of individuals in distress. So I'm delighted to hear that you are having those conversations, and I'm hoping obviously that this does become part of the structure, in as much as I think we've all seen very clear evidence of the importance of incorporating crisis support workers to support the very difficult work of frontline officers.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments? Seeing none, we will We will receive that under item 6.8. Thank you very much for the presentation. Certainly gives us an opportunity to start to think a little more creative, and certainly with innovation, it's you can see how well you've done with it already. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the board.
Thank you. Item number 4 is deputations. I do not have any listed. Do we have any deputations for today?
No, we don't, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll go to item 5, and that's communication. And the first one is 5.1, and that's correspondence from Richard Stubbing. Any comments, questions regarding that? It's on page 16.
Madam Chair, I would move 5.1, 5.2, 5.3, 5.4 just to receive, I think just for information. But if someone wants to speak to them, but I'll move all of it if you'd like at this time.
Thank you very much. And do I have a seconder? Councillor, sorry, Vice Chair Molyneux. Are there any questions on those 4 items? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Item number 6 is a report from the chief.
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair, through you. And before I move, I was remiss to not introduce our new executive officer, Superintendent Randy Slade, to the board. I don't know if everyone's met Randy, but he moved into the position a couple of months ago when Graham left. So Randy's here today as well. So
Good to see you there, Randy.
Thanks, Mayor Chair.
And in reference to 6.1, Madam Chair, this is the board report for the first 6 months ending June 30th, 2020. York Regional Police pursuant to board policy related to financial management. Also included in this report are details on the COVID-19 financial implications. And for further comment, I will turn it over to Manager of Financial Services, Jeff Channel.
Thank you very much, Chief, and good morning to the board. So I'll speak directly to the attachments to the report. The first page of the attachment is called Schedule of Operating Budget Spending as of June 30th, 2020. And it shows on the far right column total spending at 51.8% or overspent, slightly overspent as of June. I just wanted to run down the major items. The first item being salaries and benefits, we're 50.5% spent. And this does exceed budget, and it is due to slowed retirements and resignations. So we had anticipated a more robust retirements, resignations that we have yet to see. And it also excludes any bargaining outcomes. So there's no bargaining outcomes in that line item. The next line item down at 53.9% or slightly overspent is program spending. And most of this is COVID related, which I'll speak to in a moment. Moving down that list is 80.8% spent on debt-related payments. This is timing related, meaning these will reverse out by year end. And I also wanted to comment on revenues. So revenues are only at 38.6% received through June. So we are down on our revenues, again, COVID related, and I'll speak to that in a moment. Page 2 of the attachments starts with a schedule of capital budget spending as of June 30th, 2020. And it reports spending of 27.8% spent as of June. And there are a number of projects that have been deferred and impacted due to COVID. We'll be speaking more about that later today. But it includes $21 million that we plan to rebudget into 2021. The final schedule there is schedule of reserve balances as of June 30th, 2020. It's reporting $12.86 million in reserves. Everything is on plan with the exception of debt charge reserve. We are seeing a softening of development charges received. In fact, COVID, the impacts between the COVID-19 as well as Bill 148 has reduced DC collections by about 33% so far this year. The next page shows the schedule of COVID-19 financial implications as of June 30th, 2020. And I just wanted to relate to you here, from our last update, we added payroll costs. Payroll costs are included in our budget and they're referred to as baked into the budget. They are not the non-incremental costs, but we did want to show you the fairly significant amount of COVID-related payroll impacts. However, because I did want to focus today's comments on the incremental impacts. And the first item is lost revenues, which totals $1.95 million through the end of June. And again, this is down about 1/3 below budget. And by the end of the year, we're expecting revenue shortfalls between 3.0 and $3.6 million. Again, that's about 1/3 below our normal volume of revenues. The rest of the schedule shows direct costs, personal protective equipment, similar to the mask that I'm holding up, as well as some facility-related costs costing just under $900,000. And this has been mainly mitigated. So there's a number of actions on the list around mitigating expenditures. I want to draw your attention to civilian hiring. We did slow the intake, the onboarding of civilian hiring, and we've had recent conversations with the executive command team to do that with both the civilian hiring and also look at uniform hiring and just slowing it down because of the difficulties around onboarding. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Questions? Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Virginia. On the COVID-related costs, Jeff, just to clarify the payroll costs, so these are the officials that are involved with COVID-related services that you pulled out their salary, right? Which is not incremental cost to the organization because of their overtime or anything?
Yeah, the primary items in there, Ms. Fang, sorry, thank you, Ms. Fang, and through you, Chair. The primary items in here are the costs of work from home, as well as costs related to our reserve strategy, which related to frontline members. There are other COVID-related costs around sicknesses and quarantines, some overtime costs, but the main items are the two work from home policy and the reserve management costs.
How does work from home translate into payroll costs here? Please help me understand.
Oh, it's because
we still pay them, right?
Yes, sorry, and I should explain that we are still incurring those costs. It's baked into the budget already, so it's not an incremental cost, but it is an impact from COVID, meaning they're not here in the workplace the way they normally would, and that's why they're showing up on this list.
Okay. And then on the, I'm just going backwards on the attachment. On the capital budget, currently it shows a lot of new projects started, commenced in 2020. And you mentioned some of the project will be deferred or delayed. So did this chart already show outer deferral, or it's the previous plan, and then out of this current picture, we will defer some of these capital projects?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Fang, and through you, Chair. It's the latter. It's this is the existing plan, and from this, we expect to defer a portion of the spending to 2021.
Thank you. And then on the budget spending, you mentioned the salary and benefits right now do not reflect the bargaining results. So with that, the picture will be even worse, right? Do you have any ballpark estimate? It's not going to be 50.5% spend. It'll be what, 2% more, 5% more, perhaps?
Yeah, no, thank you, Ms. Fang. And
Should this, perhaps, Madam Chair, should we defer that conversation to the private, or?
I would say so, yes. I will leave that till private session if you don't mind.
Okay. That's it from me.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Chair Emerson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jeff, where do we, you're 51% over in June. What are we doing to kind of bring it back in? Yes, I realize COVID is a cost to us, but are we looking at ways to bring us in line with the budget at the end of the year?
thank you, Chairman, and through you, Chair. Yes, there's a large number of mitigating expenditure savings that we've gone after, as well as wage savings. So on the expenditure side, just to let you know, fleet and fuel is down significantly. So we're driving about 15% less kilometers. And that's one of the implications of COVID. We're saving money on We have deferred some IT matters and we're saving about $300,000 on IT savings. Training and conferences, we're expecting by the year end, about a $300,000 savings in training and conferences. But the main items, Chairman, is around our hiring. That's where we're going to get the biggest bang for the buck. And we have slowed the onboarding of both civilians, and we have discussed slowing the onboarding of uniform hires later this year as well. That's the main mitigating efforts that we have, sir.
Good, thank you.
Are there any other questions? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mr. Cooper, Mr. Purchell, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Item 6.2.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. And through you, this is a report related to some technology, which it's part of our strategy on innovation and technology and its role in policing. And the report relates to technology called Spider Tech, and it's a 2-year contract. This technology is new to York Regional Police, and I'll have one of our new deputies, Deputy Paulo Da Silva, provide some brief comments on its use. So over to you, Paulo.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Chair. This technology is the first technology in Canada in relation to our continued efforts to modernize and gain efficiencies within our police service, and it forms part of our overall strategy to improve, obviously, service delivery to our community. And essentially what the technology allows us to do is it automates processes in terms of our 911 center, whereby it sends text messages to callers, advising them of police response times if they're delayed. It keeps them up to date in relation to the status of our officers and their arrival. It also provides a function where it alleviates callbacks from our investigators. It provides what the company calls an Amazon approach to policing. It allows citizens of crime to actually log in and view the status of their cases automatically without the actual intervention of an investigator. So that will save significant time in terms of our investigators calling people back. And thirdly, it provides for the option of actually seeing from a survey perspective, seeing how the service provided their response in terms of customer service. So from start to finish, the technology allows for efficiencies in terms of modernization, and it allows our community to better engage with our police service in terms of what they experience in terms of their overall call satisfaction and response.
Madam Chair, can you hear Paulo from the end of the table very well, or? Okay.
We can hear him very well. We can't see him very well.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir. There isn't any gray hair since the other day.
Are there any other questions from members of our board? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mr. Purcell? Mr. Cooper?
I have a question, Your Worship.
Oh, go ahead, and then I'll, if you would move after, that would be terrific. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd be delighted. To you, Chief, a couple of quick questions. We are anticipating in Ontario a significant uptick in pandemic cases. The province of Ontario, as you know, is rolling out its plan to deal with that. As part of that, very clearly, York Region has already demonstrated an uptick in numbers and is going to continue to do so. I have a particular question about protocols that I will leave obviously it does not require an answer, it's simply an observation. The number of engagements between frontline officers and the public is going to increase, and accordingly, the math is simple on this. There's going to be a greater infection rate of frontline officers, barring a significant direction for use of PPE and social distancing and other measures as circumstances permit. A very specific question I have is the standard of the masks that officers are wearing. And is that standard currently not simply a mask, but at least an N95 mask? Because I think that's going to be critical to mitigate against a number of potential infections that will arise over the next several months as we go through a dramatic increase and impact of COVID across the board?
Yes, great question. And so what I'll tell you is in planning really well for the next wave, we've had our team go back and do some work around N95s, knowing that there would likely be, again, when the wave comes, another shortage. So what we did as an organization through Jeff and his team was procured a mask. I don't know if you can see it there, but it's an actual rubber type mask and has filters embedded within it, equivalent to or better than the quality of and the protection of an N95. So what we've done is purchased enough for our entire frontline to make sure they have the necessary PPE to take them throughout the pandemic. So this was done and approved within a month and a half ago. And Jeff, unless there's any other comments to it, I think that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, so the mask that the chief showed has replaceable cartridges and can be cleaned. So it's reusable, unlike a normal N95 or KN95 mask.
That's great, and well done to all of you for anticipating this, because as you know, as all of this becomes more vexatious, the demand on these things is going to go high, and so your planning is to be commended. Thank you. And now I move, Madam Chair,
Thank you very much.
as per your
And
request.
thank you. And it was seconded by Mr. Cooper. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item 6.3, direct purchase for Microsoft.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, I will, this is another contract, Microsoft Unified Support for 1 year with an option for an additional year. And as far as the technology goes, once again, I'll turn it over to Deputy De Silva to provide some brief comments.
Thank you, Chief, and through you, Madam Chair. As we gain more reliance on technology and innovation, we do require additional support in terms of Microsoft, our platform within York Regional Police, in terms of integrating all of these systems together is through Microsoft. So this addition of the subscription just allows us greater enhancement in terms of our overall support to resolve complex issues in terms of integrating our different systems. So we do see significant benefit in terms of the amount of services that Microsoft will provide to get us through any resolution of any issues that we face, and thereby allowing our officers to get back to work in terms of the technology that they use each and every day.
That's it, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Ms. Fang, go ahead, please.
Thank you, Virginia. Thanks, Paulo. Just a quick general question to understand. This Microsoft, is this support more for our Microsoft Office suites of softwares or broader? And also, I'm just wondering, how are we structured internally? For example, a lot of the software, when we subscribe, they limit your number of users. So for this one, do we offer it to all of our members, or we actually use this for our more IT heavy area, and then those officers may be able to help other areas as required?
Yes, through you, Chair. Thank you for your question. So we do have a subscription agreement that provides a covered blanket for all of our licenses across York Regional Police. This actual software is very specific to within information technology and their reliance on Microsoft to resolve those issues. It does not say that a frontline member cannot use the service, but typically that frontline member will report the service or the issue to our information technology branch, and then our information technology branch will leverage the Microsoft agreement to gain resolution to whatever issue that is facing. And this is more for those really complex integrated issues that we see in terms of cross systems and cross integration. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Would you move that for us, please, Ms. Fang? And Vice Chair Molyneux, second. Thank you very much. All those in favor? And that's carried. Item 6.4.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you, this is a report related to a number of contract extensions for vehicle equipment, printer, toner and services, offsite storage of records, software maintenance, notebooks and uniforms, all beyond 5 years. All are contained within Appendix 1 and 2 and are effective September 24th of this year. And for some further comment, I'll turn it over to Jeff and answer any specific questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief. And I just wanted to comment to the board about the largest item in Appendix 1, the first item, which is DNR Electronics. It's an extension for emergency vehicle equipment for 1 year for about just over $500,000. This relates to a design update to the 2020 Ford SUV. And what we're looking at is associated aftermarket equipment. It includes steel partitions, the emergency lighting, the equipment racking and cages. This additional contract term allows us time to complete that review. The report also speaks to a couple of COVID-related delays. We have reviews around multifunction printer, toner and services, as well as notebooks that were impacted by the COVID emergency. And this allows additional time for us to complete those reviews. Appendix 2 provides contracts extensions that have already occurred, but during summer recess, and the purchasing bylaw requires reporting of those, the chief's extensions at its next meeting. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much. Questions, please? I'm not see out there. Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Virginia. And Jeff, my apologies. It actually reminds me of a question on the capital budget, if you don't mind, but I remember it was just a quick one. I looked at it last night. There was 2 items relating to air support. One is helicopter, I believe, $4+ million. And then the other one is airport support again, also $4+. So just to clarify, is the other one that relates to the airport reconstruction or renovation something, please?
If possible, Chair, could I answer that in the private session?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll leave that until the private session, Ms. Fang.
Okay.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Seeing none, could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Bevilacqua, Mr. Purchell, all those in favor? And that's carried. Next one is 6.5.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you, this is a regular quarterly report to the board for purchases, including COVID-19 emergency purchases as well. A list of both included in both Appendixes 1 and 2. Once again, I can turn it over to Jeff to add some further comment and answer any questions.
Thanks very much, Chief. And through you, Chair, Appendix 1 lists the tender approvals, requests for proposals, and any scope deliverable changes in the second quarter. The top 2 items are around tender awards for vehicle maintenance to South Lake Ford Lincoln and Young Steels Ford. The other large tender award in the report relates to grounds maintenance. These are just new tenders for existing services that we're providing. That total list totals out to $2.46 million. The Appendix 2, however, is a new list, and it's a COVID-related emergency purchase where we have gone without a competitive bid. So the purchasing bylaw requires reporting to the board at the conclusion of an emergency. We thought that we should get this list out to the board and out to the public at a suitable time, even though the emergency hasn't ended. So our total list on this list is $530,000. This is our spending as of June. The description of the items are in the middle column, but it's around masks, it's around PPE supplies, and it includes facility costs, such as new sinks, where we've gone with touchless hardware for sinks, et cetera. So that totals $530,000, but I want to let the board know that we've spent considerably more than this. It's about $900,000 spent in this area to date. However, the rest of that list are all through either existing contracts or competitive processes. So with that, I'll answer any questions that you might have about the report.
Thank you very much. Questions about 6.5? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Vice Chair Molyneux, Mayor Bevilacqua, all those in favor? And that's carried. 6.6, go ahead, please.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you. This report also relates to a matter you had moved earlier, 5.1, which was an all chiefs memo, which was an expiry of an emergency order related to a lookup tool that was provided to police services in Ontario for in reference to COVID. So for some general comments and any questions, I'll turn it over to General Counsel Jason Fraser.
Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Do you have any comments, Jeff?
Jason? Oh, sorry, I just got, my computer froze right at the office. Good morning, Madam Chair.
Technical issues.
Always the way.
Always the technical issues. Maybe those are
Yeah.
foreshadowing some of the issues we had with the COVID portal, but in any event, we're on the COVID portal now, right? Okay.
Yes, we are.
So the COVID portal, the only comments I make is that in accordance with the board policies and procedures, we abided by those procedures throughout the use of the COVID portal. It was a good idea in terms of its idea to assist the front line by giving us some information in terms of when they were dealing with individuals who were COVID positive. Unfortunately, it didn't work out the way it was designed. And I don't think that was through anyone's fault, but in the end, the portal itself wasn't very accurate. And so it didn't really provide the information that we needed. And the other difficulty that we discovered was that it was a very basic search engine. So when our members in communications would use the portal, if they didn't look up the individual or the address exactly the way it was inputted at the front end, they wouldn't get a result. And so what we would find is that our communications people would have to play with the spellings of the last name or the first name, play with whether it was put in as Avenue or just AVE, make sure they got the postal code exactly right. Otherwise, they wouldn't get a response. So we actually had from the province a number that we conducted just over 13,000 searches. But that would be each time you searched a variation of a spelling, that would include one search. So for each incident, you may actually get 20, 25 searches. So in the end, we conducted a number of searches per se, but not actually a large number of real searches. And so with all of this, the decision was made by our organization that we were actually going to back out of the portal. So we canceled our participation in the program. And I guess we were thinking slightly ahead because within days of us saying we're getting out, the government pulled the plug on the project. So in the end, we've complied with all of the board's requirements, including now that the use of the portal is completed, we've expunged all of that data from our records management system and from our CAD system.
Makes sense. Thank
I'm
you.
happy to take any questions that the board may have.
Other questions? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Chair Emerson, Mayor Bevilacqua, all those in favor, and that's carried. Item 6.7.
Yes, Madam Chair, through you. This is the second hate crime report related to board policy 0403. We did a hate crime report to the board in the early part of 2020 as well, but this one comes as a result of a request in the past on what the impacts of COVID have been to the East and Southeast Asian communities in York Region. And for some comments on that, I will turn it over to Deputy Hammond.
Thank you, Chief. Good morning, everybody, and through you, Madam Chair. I would like to report that between January 2020 and up to this date, we have seen a slight uptick in hate crime incidents towards the Asian community. We have had 9 so far this year. But it is important to note that compared to the last 2 years, in fact, we only had 8. And obviously these incidents for this year specifically relate to COVID, whereas in previous years without COVID, those were in general hate crime incidents in the absence of COVID. So there hasn't been a substantial increase. I'm happy to report, though, that our hate crime prevention unit has undertaken a number of proactive strategies to address this. And that includes community engagement, education initiatives. We monitor social media for education and correction of any misinformation. We provide some messaging through ethnic media and Chinese radio programs, as well in collaboration with our strategic intelligence unit in monitoring hate and any of its manifestations, as well engaging with our provincial hate crime extremism investigative team in the sharing of best practices. So we continue to monitor these and incidents and respond appropriately, and as well continue with our education in the community in these events.
Thank you. Questions? Ms. Fang, go ahead.
Thank you, Virginia. Thank you, Cecile. It's not a question, it's just a comment, actually. I would like to offer my expertise. Whenever in your report you mentioned there's presentations for the Chinese and Southeast Asian community. I haven't seen those presentations, but if you want a little bit of a cultural validation, I'm happy to go through those with our team as required.
Thank you.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
I'm not seeing any other questions. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Ms. Fang, would you move that? And Mr. Cooper, second the motion. All those in favor? And that's carried. 6.8 is the item that we dealt with at the front end of our agenda. I'm not seeing any questions for that. Could I have a mover and a seconder for that, please? Mr. Purchell, Mayor Bevilacqua, all those in favor? And that's carried. 6.9.
Yes, Madam Chair, and through you, thank you very much. This report relates to our crime stats for the first 6 months of 2020. It falls in the area of executive services under Superintendent Slade, and it contains pre-COVID and COVID-19 time specific period. And for any brief comments on the trends, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Slade.
Morning, Madam Chair, and through you. As the chief indicated, just to highlight some of the specifics. So we've noticed a decrease in the crime rate of 8.6%. We have to put the caveat here with the COVID, there has been a significant decrease in many areas, such as crimes against person, which is 5.2, crimes against property, which is just over 12%. Significant increase in one area, and that's drug violations. They're up both in drug possession and trafficking, 46 and 54% respectively. And notably about our traffic, because traffic has diminished significantly during that period as our traffic violations significantly decreased 23%. Subject to any specific questions, I turn it back to the chief.
Any questions, Madam Chair? That's it in terms of crime stats.
Thank you. Questions about the crime stats? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Bevilacqua, Vice Chair Molyneux, all those in favor? And that's carried. We are at 6.10.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Chair. And through you, this report is a semi-annual report as well related to the administration of the complaint system under Part 5 of the Police Services Act. The data contained within is the first 6 months of 2020. Turn it over to Jason Fraser for some brief comments and to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Chief, and good morning again, Madam Chair and members of the board. Again, I have the great fortune of presenting public complaint stats where the numbers are quite low. Although the number is up from last year, it's down from the year before. And I think the important considerations so far is that out of the complaints that we've received, the OIPRD has not taken more than half of those complaints. So they have been denied right at the outset. And out of the complaints that we've received so far, none have led to any sort of discipline. We have one policy complaint that remains outstanding. We have one complaint directed to us by OIPRD that remains outstanding, but otherwise the outcomes have been quite positive.
Thank you. Questions? Comments? I'm not seeing any questions. or comments? Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Chair Emerson, Mr. Cooper, all those in favor? And that's carried. 6.11.
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. This report came in a little bit later, but it's a very heartfelt, generous cash donation from the estate of Shirley Ormsby for $20,000. I will turn it over to Jason to add some further comment to that.
Mind if I take it, Jason?
It involves money. More than happy to have Jeff take over this.
Got to change their initials. Jeff, can you take that, please?
Thank you, Chief. And as,
Sorry, Jason.
as the chief mentioned, this is a generous bequest from the estate of Shirley Ormsby. Both Chuck and Shirley Ormsby were very generous to the Safety Village in life. And in their death, they've bequest $20,000. A plaque will be engraved, will be placed on the bench in the Peace Tree Garden at the Safety Village to recognize the donation. And again, this needs the board's pre-approval in accordance with the donations and sponsorships policy. With that, any questions that you might have?
What a nice thing to do. Very generous. Very nice. Any questions? Mr. Cooper, you have a question?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm just curious if we have a list of other sponsorship opportunities available to members of the public throughout YRB.
That is a good question. I will need to get back to you on that, Mr. Cooper. My apologies. I don't believe that there is a general list of opportunities the way that you're describing it.
Okay, thank you very much.
We'll look forward to having that at some point. Thank you. Perhaps this would be the start of some other generous donations for our community facilities as well. Thank you. We are now at item 7, report of the board chair, and I have placed a report on the agenda regarding the meetings that Vice Chair Molyneux and I had with our community. It seems several months ago now. I would think it was probably July, and have taken a look at the number of points that they have brought forward to us with concerns, and in many cases with solutions as well. And so the recommendations are self-explanatory in that we will work with our chief and have consultation and engagement with our community stakeholders, make sure that the Police Services Board is working along with our police as well, and with the intent of in Q1 2020 to come back with recommendations to move forward. Are there any questions on this report at this time? I'm not seeing any. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Bevilacqua and Vice Chair Molyneux, all those in favor? And that's carried. We are at number 8, items for considerations, reports of the Executive Director. Mafalda, might you be there?
I'm here. Hello.
Thank you.
The first report is the proposed schedule of board meetings for 2021. We have not indicated location as of yet. That remains to be determined in light of COVID, but I suspect we will continue with virtual meetings until further notice at this time.
Thank you. Any questions, concerns about the dates that have been selected? Did we miss something that might be happening that we're not aware of, or are we in good shape? Seeing no comments, then could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Mayor Bevilacqua, Ms. Fang, all those in favor? And that's carried. Go ahead. Item 8.2.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is the standing report on the public fund. We have not received requests since, I believe it's since May. And the balance as of August 31st is just over $132,000. I'll take any question.
Thank you. I suspect when community groups get back together to host fundraising events, they will be including a request to us as well. So I guess we'll just wait and see. Other questions at all for, yes, go ahead, Chair Emerson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On the list on Appendix 1, just refresh my memory. We're unable to have the Chief Jolles farewell, but we donated $100,000. I assume that went in that special fund to that he was asking for, and I assume that still went ahead as the fund was set up.
Yes, I believe so, Chairman Emerson. That was for an internal fund for the mental health and well-being of our officers, and perhaps I can defer to IRP Jeff to speak to that status of that fund.
I can confirm that the funds received for Chief Jolles' farewell party are in a segregated fund and awaiting disbursement once we determine how to handle that farewell party, as well as and any expenditures that might be incurred from that, followed then by the programming, which now looks to be 2021 programming around wellness.
So Jeff, did they set up a committee to administrate that fund, or was it just done by YRP?
At this point, it's just done by YRP. However, the chief is the chair on that subcommittee.
The old chief or the new chief?
Me, sir.
Just checking.
But I know what the chief had in mind.
I hear you. And the final one, can you, I know we did it back in 2018. The Wounded Warriors one, did I hear rumblings that something kind of went wrong with that fund or went sideways? Does anybody know? You give them $55,000. They had a big fundraiser, but am I hearing that right, or is it being misused, or what?
I can speak to it.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead, Jeff.
Thank you, Chairman, and through you to the board. Wounded Warriors, we had a great partnership with Wounded Warriors. They allocated a portion so it would be directed back to YRP members. So we actually received some direct funding back from Wounded Warriors as part of that partnership. Right you are, however, in the media, Wounded Warriors has received some attention around how its spending works, but I didn't see any of that with respect to our own fundraising activities with them. I thought we had a great experience. With that, I'd take any questions.
I'm going to meet with Mr. Hinder next week, and that will be one question that I'm going to find out. So how much money did we get back, Jeff? Do you remember?
I will need to get back to you, but it's my understanding that initiative raised in the neighborhood of $300,000.
Yes, it was. Yeah, it was a huge chunk of money. It was at the Magna Center. So, okay, I don't know. Maybe I read something in the paper, or maybe I heard something that maybe that kind of went sideways or something happened there. But okay, I appreciate that. I don't need a follow-up. I'll follow up with Mr. Hinder. Thank you. Madam Chair, I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you very much. Seconded by Mr. Cooper. All those in favor? And that's carried. And we are now down to unfinished business. Do we have any unfinished business at this time? I'm not seeing any. We will move to other business. Is there other business we should be attending to at this point? I'm not seeing any.
Well, Madam Chair, I think the chief and I were talking late last night or this morning, I forget now, about the groundbreaking on Friday regarding
yes. One district.
One district, and I was at a groundbreaking yesterday with about 4 or 5 members of the provincial MPPs and regarding York University, and there didn't seem to be the issue regarding 25 people, because as soon as there was about 25, probably 20 or 25 press there, then more so than others. So I mentioned to the chief, I think we should go ahead with it. Looks like a nice sunny day. I think it'd be a good day to get it done. And I know there was a memo sent out. I think it was just that the board members weren't welcome. I think you can. I think it's a big area. I don't think it's a very small area. It's a big construction site, I assume. So we will be able to social distance with our mask. And so I would say you can't open it to everyone, but I think if some of the board members would like to attend, we're outside, we're not inside. I don't believe there's any refreshments. I think it's just a matter of doing a ceremonial groundbreaking, and so that District 1 can get going. So I'm hoping that some will show, and I know the schedule is tough, and I know some people are cautious about being safe in that. So I would hopefully, I will be there, and I know the chair will be there also. So if there's any others that would like to come, I have no issue, and if I'll take the heat, if the press come to me, I will do all the answering of why we've had a few extra people, but I'm okay with that. And I'll be wearing my Josh Cooper mask that he gave me very nicely. It's a blue and white one that you'll see me with it on, and it's a very nice mask, sir. I get a lot of compliments, so I thank you for that. So other than that, I don't know if anyone else has a comment, but I as long as we social distance and you wear your mask, I believe, yeah, 25. If we ended up with 32, that I don't have an issue. I'll take the heat. Don't worry.
Chairman
Thank you,
Emerson. Yep, sorry, I'll just add one comment, is that we as an executive command team will follow up with a discussion here to determine how many of us will be there. Obviously, I'll be there, and then we'll have support there for the groundbreaking as well.
Very good. Mr. Cooper?
Yes, on a different matter, although I will be there Friday wearing my mask so I can be twins with Chairman Emerson. I did want to make a very special thank you to YRP, who so kindly and graciously hosted a fundraising event last weekend for Baycrest Foundation. And from the chief through Deputy Hammond was also involved before she was Deputy Hammond, Karen Richards and the entire events team. They did an absolutely fantastic job. They could not have been better to work with, and their professionalism knew no bounds. And I just wanted to throw out there a huge thank you. We sent out a survey to our participants and had tremendous response on everything to do with YRP. And so I just wanted to say thank you very much on so many different levels for all of your hospitality and graciousness and professionalism, and also for the chief riding with me and ahead of me for 59 kilometers. It's given me a really new perspective of the chief, I have to admit, and it was very much appreciated. So thank you very much to everyone involved.
Do I need to ask what the perspective before was, or maybe we'll leave that for the private session?
No.
Thank you very much. Ms. Fang, you had a comment, question?
Yes, thank you, Virginia. I have a quick comment, please. I think I understand Wayne's comment. However, as Police Services Board in the public sector, we should be consistent in terms of our behaviors and reactions to the pandemic environment, especially when the provincial government has an explicit directive out there in terms of gatherings, indoor and outdoor. And for Monday, the ceremony, we cut it, tried to be compliant with this policy. But on Friday, we will have a different treatment of the groundbreaking event. I think that inconsistency will draw unnecessary publicity to the board. And it's an easy fix. I think we could just allow live streaming and people can still support that groundbreaking by not breaking the provincial directive. I just think we need to model our behavior as responsible citizens and organizations, and this is easy to do.
Chair Emerson?
Madam Chair, I'll stand behind what I statement from you. I believe the ground, it's not as matter you're standing in a backyard, you're standing in a field in a huge pot, but I mean, that's up to Ms. Fang if she wants to attend or not. The only question I'd ask, do I have to bring my own shovel, or do is there one there? I don't want to break the budget, but I will be there, and I agree that the province has stated these things, but I think at certain incidents, this was planned a long time ago. We're not at a wedding. We're not in someone's backyard when there's 100 people. I believe that there might be a few extra than the 25, so I stand by what I say, and I will take the heat on behalf of the board and the Region of York. Because it is a Region of York building. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other comments, we've gone to other business. We are now at private session. Could I have a motion to move into private session, please? Mr. Cooper, Vice Chair Molyneux, all those in favor? That's carried. Do we want a 5-minute break or do we want to just keep on moving along?
5 minutes would be
Josh,
great, Madam Chair, while we set up here.
Okay, so we'll take a 5-minute break. I'm looking at the clock. My clock is 10:44, so perhaps at 5 to 11.
Sure, thank you.
Now, let's say 11 o'clock.
Okay, great.
Okay.